Hello, this is Henry Hertzberger again, and we're continuing the discussion we had regarding the origins of astrology and how astrology was put together, and how um, we went from, let's say, the chart of a year, the Kala Purusha, where we have 12 months of a year, and use that as a model for a daily chart, the chart that we use normally. Let's say your sun sign chart, because we use sun signs. You say, I'm a Pisces, or I'm an Aries, or I'm a Taurus, or whatever it is, or Scorpio. So as I mentioned before, and I'm keeping this fairly simple, there's more complexity to all this, and one can go into all of that, but in order to understand the gist of it, we're remembering that about 2,000 years ago, the formalization of astrology under the Greco-Roman Empire meant that the heavens, the cycle of the sun moving above and below the equator, that was divided into 4 seasons, the 2 equinoxes. I'm going to show you the picture. You see, you've got spring, then you've got summer, you've got fall, winter, and then you have each season divided into 3 parts, the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning was more creative, fixed, and then changing. So that's how we came up with these. Each sign is either creative or initiating energy, fixing energy, or changing energy. And originally, the signs were 6,000 years ago, when this was actually being worked on. The sign Taurus was here for fertility in spring, then Leo here when it's very hot and fiery and lions come out, so Leo, very royal energy or active energy, and then Scorpio was here for this transcending of nature and fall, going inward, and then the winter was Aquarius for society working together. That was the constellation then. So they start to assume meanings, these labels for the different spatial positions, the energies of the solar travel. They became associated with certain constellations as markers, and then they assumed certain other meanings according to the energies. And as I mentioned last time also, the sun rises about 1 degree every day as it goes to the highest point in summer. So 30 degrees, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. So you've got 3 30-day months, which also lines up with the lunar cycle. So the moon goes 15 days increasing, 15 days decreasing. So we have 30 lunar days, 30 lunar days, 30 lunar days, and then we have a total of 12 months of the year. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, Vishnu Purana, these ancient texts, they talk about how at this point there's a certain aditya or energy, solar energy, and it's associated with certain laws of nature, devatas, and so on. So that is the model for the year, or Kala Purusha. The being, Kala means time, so Purusha means being. So it's the being of time for the year, for nature, Mother Nature. So how do we go from there to a daily cycle? Well, in order to do that, we have to consider that in a daily cycle, we're not looking at the equator so much. We're looking at the horizon, and we see that the sun rises and then goes to the high above it comes up over the horizon. It's right at the horizon, and then the energy peaks at noon, highest point above the horizon, and then it starts fading out towards when it reaches the horizon again at sunset. And then the solar energy is most uh, um, inward or less manifest during the night, obviously, and midnight, you could say, is the peak of inward or quality of the least amount of energy, of solar energy, and that would correspond in the yearly cycle to the peak of winter. So we can draw that this way. You see, so I have the sunrise, then it goes to the highest point, and then it goes to here. I think I have that right. Yes. So it goes from sunrise to noon to sunset and so on. So this would be your sun sign chart. And you know, when if on a particular day you're born when the sun is very high in the sky, that gives you a lot of solar energy. So also the ancients were looking to see what energies were there when you were born that were above you. So if you're born in the daytime and the sun was very high in the sky, that would correspond to a lot of outward energy. And if Mars was there with the sun, Mars also a lot of outward energy. However, if you're born at midnight when the moon was there, moon is more powerful at night. So if you're born at midnight, the moon is strong, and also Venus is another planet that represents the night. It's more of a night time that it comes up. So you have these concepts that certain planets are stronger positionally, like rising or high above you or setting or below you. Below you meaning that would mean the night, so the moon obviously is going to be strong here, the sun is going to be strong here. So this is how that came about. And of course these different positions above and below the horizon, they modeled, they just gave the same labels, Aries, let's say, whatever the sign was at the equinox. Usually it's Aries at the equinox. We're looking at the equinox sun but each, depending on when you're born, if the sun is in Taurus, then the next one will be Gemini, and so on, in the circle, the daily cycle. So this is really linked up to which sun sign you're in. So sunrise, there's a certain sun energy. In spring, it's labeled as Aries. Remember that what happened over 2,000 years is that the original position of spring, which was given a marker at that time as Aries, had all these meanings of creativity and so on. Now after 2,000 years, because of the wobble of the earth, this position is occupied by what we call Pisces constellation. So if we go literally by the actual constellation, then we say that's Pisces. But Pisces is like number one, like Aries qualities then. Too confusing. So in order to keep it simple, in the West they just basically labeled this. This is Aries, this is that. To do that, they just rotated whatever, the whole chart by some degrees to preserve the perspective of energetics. If you don't do that, then there's no meaning to it. So you start celebrating spring 1 month later. This happened in India because of the fact that in India the books that were written that were 2,000 years ago, they were held sacred, and so they're written like manuals, like a driver's manual. This is over here, this is over here, that means this is over. There wasn't much questioning of why things were the way they were. Of course, in the West, because of the Greek philosophical dialectic, Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and Ptolemy. They all tried to understand why, and they wrote it in the book. That doesn't mean that in the East they didn't try to understand, but it was more like, this is what my teacher said, and this is how it is. And originally, I'm sure, they understood this and they tried to teach their students why. That would be in the direct personal discussion of master-disciple. But then over the centuries, that kind of got lost, and they just have the books, the texts, and they all say this is Aries, so when the spring equinox is there, this is the actual constellation Aries, they believe. So if you do that, then you celebrate spring 1 month later. And you don't partake of the energies, the flow of energies that you're trying to line up with. Because spring yagyas or ceremonies to bring creativity then won't correspond to the right month. They'll be 1 month late. And if this keeps on going, then eventually you start celebrating spring in the beginning of summer, and then you start celebrating summer. Eventually it's going to be spring celebrated in winter, in the beginning of winter, and it gets confused. It will lose its meaning. So that's why in the West we artificially just kept that we just kept the labels the same. I think that astrology eventually will have to come up with better labeling, because future generations will start getting confused, and scientific method is, hey, let's keep precision. The most precise is the numbering, 1, 2, 3, spatial numbering, which is the basis of all this, and then we can give it a universal name. Each has a universal name. Adityas is a very good approach, actually. Those names. This is this Aditya, Aditya, and we have 12 Adityas, starting with the first one, Datar, the giver of life. Maybe that would be one way to label it, and then we say Datar has these qualities, instead of saying Aries constellation has these qualities, because it's not the constellation, it's the position. Okay, so now when we look at what about the individual chart, that has to do with my rising sign, not the sun sign, but rising sign. Well, let's discuss that in the next video. We'll try to keep each one short enough that you can assimilate, you can think about these, and then we'll do another explanation. You can think about that, and then what I'd like to do is once we have some idea of that, then we'll take a little more close look at how do you analyze a chart. What do you do? I'd like to continue on and describe all the different details, but we have to start somewhat basic so we understand how did this whole knowledge get derived and the logic of it. So anyway, look forward to talking soon and continue this discussion.